Weld 2540, I believe is the number of it. So I would encourage my students as we have you entering that course to be watching this film as well, because the fit-up techniques are going to be relevant to both. What we're going to do today is I'm going to go over the chapter in your textbook, but I'm also going to actually do some fit-up, some layout and fit-up. And I want you to follow along. What we're going to do is I've got some flanges. First thing we're going to do, we're going to take two pieces of pipe. We're going to line these two pieces of pipe up, and we'll use framing squares and levels and so forth to line these up, and then we're going to tack them in place and make sure that they're aligned. I'm going to show you how to do this with small pipe in pipe racks, but then I'm going to show you another technique that will allow you to fit up pipe like this, even if each one of these pieces of pipe were 20 feet long and 3 feet in diameter. I'm going to show you a technique to use to line them up. Once we get this joint fit here, we're going to put a flange out here on the end, and we're going to square the flange with the pipe in two directions, two dimensions. Then we're going to come down here. We're going to put on another flange on this end, and we're going to two-hole these flanges with each other so that they're square with each other and they're also horizontally level with one another. Then we're going to come here into the middle of the pipe someplace, maybe here, and we're going to put another piece of pipe on here with a flange on top of it. And I'm going to show you how to square the flange with the pipe, both in this direction, but also two-hole with it this way. And one thing I left out, we're going to put a reducer in right here also. We'll put a reducer in. So we'll have a reducer go down to a smaller flange here. So that's basically what it's going to look like. You can see we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 welds when it's all done. We're not actually going to weld them out, but we're just going to go through the fit-up techniques. So first thing I want to do then is read from your book on page 222. All of these numbered items here. This is how your author suggests that you take care of this pipe. You're going to align the pipe or pipe fitting as closely as possible and hold it in this position. That's your first step. Second step, weld a single tack in place. Third, measure the location of the pipe or the pipe fitting. 4, if necessary, adjust the position of the pipe or pipe fitting until it is in the specified location. 5, weld a second tack weld opposite the first tack weld. 6, check the location of the pipe or the fitting again, and if necessary, adjust the position. And then finally 7, weld the two remaining tacks. So our author says we're going to put 4 tacks in it, and I agree with him. This is the way we always do it. Here's looking on your pipe. Our first tack's going to be right here on top, and then we're going to make sure that our pipe is level. Once we get it level, we'll go ahead and we'll put the tack on the bottom. Now we can still move it sideways. So what we're going to do is once we get these top and bottom tacks, we're going to roll the pipe 90 degrees and make sure it's level and square, and then we'll put our other 2 tacks on. And that's how we're going to make our first fit. Okay. Now we're going to do a little tack welding here. Now the way we want to check this, first of all, we're not really all that concerned with these 2 pipes being level with one another right now. What we are concerned is that they're the same elevation. Remember, when we make the fit up, we're only allowed a 1/16 of an inch of mismatch on the inside of the fit up. So you can see, well, you probably can't see, but we're a little bit low here. So I either have to bring this pipe up some or lower this pipe down some. So I think it would be easier just to go ahead and lower this one down. And now my level is touching. And right there looks pretty good. Okay, now to get a temporary fit, I'm going to go ahead and drop or raise this one here. to bring it in closer. Oops. These aren't the best pipe jacks in the world, but not bad. Okay, so that's pretty close. Then we want to get our root opening, and you'll use a 3/32 gap rod, just like we do when we're welding pipe. And so I'm going to grab one. I've got it laying right here. So we'll put our gap rod in there like so, and hope it stays. One trick you can use is to bend it like this. Put it in, fit it up, like so. Okay, that's pretty close right there. So we're going to put our first tack on. Cover. Now you can see I'm using MIG to do this fit up. MIG is real convenient to do fit up, especially if you're working by yourself. Now you can see I rotated the pipe. What I can do now to make sure we're level is I can put two levels on it. Like so. And just check the bubbles. This one is riding the right-hand line. This one is riding the left-hand line. So we're going to have to bring them in. So we're going to start by leveling this piece. And I'll just lower this. Oop. Correction, I'll just raise this. There we go. Till that's level. Check it here. Wish I had some better pipe stands. This pipe's awful light for what I'm doing. I just don't like these pipe stands. Okay, right there. So we're level here, level there. Now a way to check it is to use two framing squares. Put a framing square on each, bring it in, and you can see at the top, it's touching at the top, but we have about a 3/32 opening at the bottom, so we've got to make an adjustment somewhere. So we can make that adjustment by dropping this in, and that'll kick that in. I probably should have used heavier pipe. It would have been easier. All right, let's see what we have now. Also, if you have a helper, it really helps a lot to do this. Still not there, but we're closer. So let's drop this in a little bit. See what we've got now. Still not there. These pipe stands are just a pain in the butt. Okay, now that's pretty close right there. So I'm going to put a little bridge tack on there. Notice I said a bridge tack. That means that tack will be removed before we make the weld. The eyes. Okay. Now we're going to rotate the pipe 90 degrees. But before we do, let's take a look at it. And just step back and look down the length. Put an eyeball on it. Okay, we got a little bit of a dog leg in it, which was to be expected. Check it again. Okay, that got most of it off. So now we're going to go ahead and rotate it because we're going to be pretty close right here. Put our squares back on. Okay, it's got to go down in the middle. Okay, that's fairly close. It came down a little too far. Okay. There we go. So now we're going to go ahead and put a tack here. We've got them aligned. Eyes. And I rotated the pipe again, and I'm going to put my last tack in. Now, one thing I want to draw to your attention is, if you can get a look at this joint, you can see that's pretty wide. That's more than 3/32 of an inch. And it's not very consistent. The reason is this piece of pipe was cut crooked. We just kind of cut it up here for demonstration purposes. We really didn't take the time necessary to bevel it, get it fit up to where we had the proper root opening all the way around. Root opening on something like this, of course, depending on the process you're using, would be typically 3/32 of an inch. So now we've got this on here. That's the first step of aligning this. But now, imagine we had pipe that was, let's say 12 inches in diameter, and we had two 20-foot lengths. The same kind of thing that you might come across if you're in pipeline welding, if you're out there and you have your own truck. Well, how do you line up something that's that big? It's easy to line it up here where we got rolls and a little welding machine and levels and squares and everything. But how do you line up something that's that long? There's a little trick to it, and I'm going to show you what it is right now. Okay, now if you can imagine this stuff being 12 inches diameter, each stick 20 feet long, what you can do when you're out there in the field, and I've done this often in welding shops. For many years I worked in code pressure vessel shops, building pressure vessels and piping to the ASME code for use out in these oil fields. And if you have two long pieces of pipe and you want to make sure they're lined up properly, just get a couple of studs. In this case, I'm using a couple of little bolts, but you can use the butt end of a used welding electrode or just anything that you can tack weld to the edge of the pipe. Eyeballs. Well, now we've lost our ground. Let's try this again. Okay. Next, get yourself a chalk line or a piece of string, and we're just simply going to stretch a line from one of these to the other. Then with your tape measure, measure the distance from the top of the pipe to the line. And I've got 1 7/8 of an inch to the bottom of the line there. And here I have 1 7/8 of an inch to the bottom of the line there. Well, just looking at it now, I can tell we've got a slight bow here. And I have 1 15/16. So it's about a 1/16 of an inch lower here than on the ends. Now this is just a small piece of pipe right here. If we were actually stretched over a 40-foot length, although we have 1/16 of an inch on this small scale, if we were working with 12-inch diameter pipe and this entire run was 40 feet long, that 1/16 of an inch difference would translate to about probably 3/8 of an inch. We would probably be off about 3/8 of an inch here over such a long run. So you can simply stretch a string and align your pipe in this manner. And of course, when you're out in the field, what you're going to do is you're going to set it on the side. So it'll be laying down like that, and you'll move your pipe inside and out, and once you get it, you'll make your tacks, and then you'll roll it 90 degrees, and then you'll get your next bit. You simply have to move these. Excellent way, quick and easy way, and an accurate way to make sure you've got those pipe aligned properly. Okay, our next step. Now we're going to go ahead and attach a flange to one end. Now again, I haven't beveled this pipe. I haven't cleaned it up or prepped it very well. What we're going to do is we're going to take a flange, and this is a, well, it's got so much paint on it I can't read it. But looking from how high that face is raised, I would speculate that this is probably either a 300 or a 600 pound flange. And what we'll do is we'll get our 2-hole pins and we'll line it up. And actually, we don't even need to use the 2-hole pins for this first one. We'll just set it on here like this, get our gap right here on the top, and I'll look inside here to make sure that the ID is lined up with the ID here, and then I'll just pull it out a little bit and get our tack. This is much easier when you have a helper, but I don't have a helper today, so I'm going to try it on my own. Since I'm working on just blank pipe right now, I don't have to worry about 2-holing it at the moment. Okay, that's our first tack. Next thing we want to do is check the level on our pipe. Okay, once more, I'm right in the line on that side. So, I want to put this on here, and I want to ride the line on that side as well. So I've got to knock it down a little bit like that. First of all, check your sides, though, to make sure it's lined up. Check your ID to make sure that's lined up. Remember, when you tack a weld, it's not only going to pull this way, but it'll shift sideways as well. So check your ID. Now, if you have to hit one of these flanges, make sure you hit it out here on the area away from the face. Don't ever hit on the face here, or you'll mess up that face and you won't get a proper seal. So we're going to hit it. Check it again. And because I didn't prepare this accurately enough, I'm going to have to re-tack it. Not enough room. Eyeballs. Okay, check it again. Check it here. Now we're going to tack it on the bottom. Eyes. Okay. Then we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. Check our level. Check our level here. Adjust it as necessary. I came a little too much. Now sometimes, once in a while, you'll find yourself in a situation to where you can't get away from hitting the face. Sometimes you've just got to hit that face. If that happens, use a piece of wood, a 2x4 or 1x4, lay it up against that face and then hit the wood. And that way you'll keep from chingering up the face of the flange. Okay, now that's where I want it. Now I left it just a little bit out. I left it a little bit out because when I tack it, the tack's going to draw, and that should pull it fairly close to even. Eyes. Okay. Our first flange is on. So we've accomplished 2 tasks. We've got 2 welds ready to make now. Now we're going to move down here to the other end. And we're going to put on our reducer. Now this is I believe it's a 2.5 to 2 inch reducer. 2 1/4. Okay, it's 2.5 to 1.5. Oh no, pardon me, a 2 to 1.5 reducer. So we're going to put this on like so, and we're going to tack it on here. Put it on just about like that, right there. So again, our gap rod in here. Check to make sure it's aligned properly. Eyes. And we're not getting the ground. One reason you don't get a ground or you lose your ground like this is because of the coating that's put over top of the metal. So you got to make sure you get a good ground. That's 2 or 3 times now I've lost my ground because of this coating that's put on the steel. So what I'm going to have to do is come over here . Put that there so I'm making ground, and then we'll hook it up to here. That also illustrates why you have to clean your pipe up before you try to weld on it. You've got to get all of that stuff off or else you can suck it into your weld. Okay, here we go again. Let's try it one more time. Eyes. Okay, that's our first tack. Now we've got to square this. with the pipe. So you're going to want to take your level, check the face, and check it here. All right, we're just barely riding that line. So we're going to want to knock this down to where we're just barely riding the line. Now, a lot of times I use a standard screwdriver. When I get it close, you don't have to bang on it with a hammer. You can just put your screwdriver, the blade of the screwdriver in there, and bend it and get it exactly where you want it. Now, when you got it fit up right, go ahead and put a tack on the bottom. Again, remember that we're using bridge tacks. Bridge tacks which will be removed before we make the final weldment. Then you're going to rotate it 90 degrees. Do the same thing. Check it here. Okay, that's level. Check it there. Got to go down some. Okay, that's good. All right. Eyes. Lost that ground again. Having a helper really makes this a lot easier job. Eyes. And actually being a helper is where a lot of people learn how to do this stuff. You're working with a fitter, that helper gets invaluable experience in all of these little tricks and techniques. Okay, at this point, now we need our 2-hole pins. So let me step into the tool room there and grab them. Okay. This is a 2-hole pin. It has a little spring here and a little clamp. You press on this clamp and that'll slide off. What you do is you put this into the bolt hole of your flange, slip this in on the other side, push it up tight and it'll lock. This is better than trying to just use bolts. A lot of people will just slip a bolt in there, but bolts are sloppy. This is much more accurate. So you want to make sure you use 2-hole pins whenever possible. So I'm going to come down here, and we're going to 2-hole this one. Put in that 2-hole pin. And you want to get as wide a reach as you can, so I'm going to skip these 2 center ones and drop down a little bit so I've got a wider expanse. Then we'll put our level on there, like so. Rotate the pipe till it's level. Now comes the tricky part. Tricky part is getting it apart. Well, my 2-hole pin seems to be broken. Okay. Now we're going to go with our smaller flange on the other end. So we'll put this on. And this on. Now if you look at that, there's only 4 bolt holes on this flange, and this is also a raised face 600-pound flange. So we're going to take our other level, and where'd our gap rod go? Aha. We've got our gap rod. We're going to stick our gap rod in here. We're going to put our level on here. Line it up. This is where these quick change welding hoods really come in handy. Eyeballs. Okay. Not bad for being out of practice. Alrighty. So we're two-holed there. It's off a little bit here. It's got to swing a little bit, so we've got to keep this pipe from moving. Fortunately, this is mild steel pipe, and I can just go ahead and tack it to keep it from moving for a moment. So I'm going to put a little bridge tack on it. Eyes. That's level. We got to swing a little bit with this. Okay, that's level. So this and that, both flanges are two-holed to each other. And another good way to check is to shove your level all the way back up until it stops against the two-hole pins. And do that with both of them. Do that on both ends. Shove it all the way up until it's up tight against the two-hole pins. And then just put your eyeball across there. Look across the top of this, and then look across the top of that other level. Keep looking at it like this, and you can make sure that the two are lined up. Just off just a tad. It's got to swing just a little bit more. So that's a final way to check, because you never know if your level is going to be off a little bit. But typically, if you've got a nice straight edge and a nice straight edge, you can use that technique, put your eyeball across there, and make sure they're properly lined up. Okay, once we're sure of that, then again, we've got to come back here and check to make sure that that second flange is aligned. So we're going to put it on the face of the flange. And in this case, we've got to go out with it a little bit. And that's just right. Okay. So now we're ready to put our second tack in, and we'll tack it on the bottom. So we're good there. Then we want to go ahead and rotate it. Check it again. Okay, and tack it. Okay, now one final way of checking these with your tape measure. If you're going to fit, you got to make sure you know how to read a tape properly and accurately and down to a 1/16 of an inch. Most of these codes will allow a 1/16 of an inch. Pressure vessels usually allow an 1/8 of an inch. But you need to be able to read a tape measure if you're going to be a fitter. Put it on there and come over. 81 1/8 of an inch to the face, okay? Rotate it. Check the other side. 81 and just over 1/8 of an inch. So we're within about a 32nd that way. That's good. We'll rotate it 90 degrees and we'll check it this way now. .81 and just over a 1/16. So we're off about a 32nd of an inch there. Well, what's it look like here? 81 and an 1/8. So we're off less than a 32nd of an inch in both directions, which is well within code. Now, one other thing I want to point out to you. If you have to cut a piece of pipe and put a couple of flanges on, and that pipe's going to go into an existing system, it's going to hook up to something. One thing you need to be mindful of is the thickness of the gaskets that are going to go in here. And whenever you calculate how long that piece of pipe should be cut, you've got to deduct for the thickness of your gaskets. You've got to deduct for the root opening on every weld that you're going to make. Otherwise, you're going to cut your pipe too long. If you're going to cut a pipe wrong, it's best to cut it too long. But with practice and experience, you'll get to where you can cut them right the first time, every time. So now we've done 4 of our welds. We're done here, we're done here, we're done here, we're done here. So now we just have 1, 2 more to do. And excuse me one moment while I gather that up. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to put on our branch, and we're going to put a flange on it. Typically, the flange is welded onto the branch prior to installation on the header or the main piece of pipe. So what we're going to do is take our little flange here, and let me drag this over. Find a relatively flat place, lay that down, put our gap rod in there, move our ground, and then set our pipe. Eyeballs. Okay. Same thing here. We've got to square everything up. So now I can lay this on the back of the flange, and when you do, you want to make sure that, again, you're running with your bolt holes. That way you keep everything square. Okay, it's perfectly level right there. Let's take out the gap rod now. Got to open it up some. Okay. We'll put our second tack in. Lost our ground. I hate it when I lose my ground. Eyes. Okay. Then, now I can tell we got a heck of a dog leg in there already, so before I try to check it with my level, I'm just going to go ahead and make some gross adjustments to it. And just eyeball it fairly close. Like so. Then set it back down. Recheck. Okay, it's level. Okay, it's got to suck over this way a little bit, so I'll put this tack in first, and that should draw it enough to where it's pretty fairly level. Eyeballs. There we go with that darn ground again. Then finally come over here and put your last one in. Okay. Now typically, of course, you'd go ahead and complete this weld now before we ever put it on the pipe. Now the way a branch is usually attached, there's actually a couple of ways. And somewhere in here, you might put a T. If you were to put a T in, you'd have 1, 2, 3 more welds. Okay? Another way to do it is to simply nestle the branch into the header itself, like this. Then you have one weld. Under ASME Section 8 pressure vessels, this is allowed, but you don't typically see this out in the field anymore in piping. Almost always now you'll see a T-joint put in there. If you have to fit it up like this, here's the inside of your pipe. This is our branch running up. Then you're going to want to radius this pipe to the ID of the main line. That way you don't restrict the flow any. And when you fit that up, you can only have an 1/8 of an inch root opening all the way around it. So this would be your branch coming down, and then you'd have an 1/8 of an inch root opening all the way around. Full penetration weld is required. Now, I have not taken the time to prep this to do a fabricated branch like this, and I don't have a T. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to tack it to the surface of the metal simply for illustration purposes. Now, before we do anything, we have to find the center of the pipe. So we're going to put our 2-hole pins back on. Now I'll use the good ones. And we'll level it. Now I don't want it to move, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to weld it. I'm going to with my little brace to keep it from moving. Eyes. Okay, it's leveled. Now our branch has to be level. If we're looking at this end on, here's our flange. Here's our pipe opening. And our branch is coming up like this. And that's what it looks like if you're looking at it from end on. Well, we've leveled this. So now this has got to be level, and this, the center line of our branch, has to be even with the center line of our pipe. How do you do that? You've got to find the center of the pipe. Now you could use a little instrument called a center head. Now if you look at this, you'll see it's got degree marks across here, and then it's got a little bubble level right in the center. These things are pretty handy if you don't have to do really critical, really accurate work. Just for typical pipe fitting where you have like 1/8 inch tolerances, you can simply take this and cradle it on the pipe, check your level, Make sure your two-hole is level, and then there you have it. So we just set it on here like this, right like that, and then just give it a light tap. And I say a light tap. This is not a center punch. You don't want to really crank on it. You just want to give it a light tap, and then you've got a little hole there. Now you can go ahead and get a center punch and really punch it. Now, according to our center head here, that is the center of our pipe. Well, I have a bad habit of not trusting center heads. Like I say, they're great for rough calculations, but to really be sure, you want to use a level and a tape measure to find the center of your pipe. And the way you do that is to simply lay the pipe, or lay your level on the side of the pipe and level it up. Use your tape then to measure. You go until it's level, and then you look. Okay, I've got 1 3/16 of an inch to that little center punch from the edge. Now I come over here. I'll check it again. One 3/16. So we are accurate enough. That center head was accurate enough to go ahead and use it. So that's another way of finding the top dead center of your pipe, which you're always going to have to do. If you don't have a center head available, use a level and a tape measure. Okay, now at this point, if we were going to just fabricate this, we'd go ahead and lay this out, cut it, clean it all up, make sure you dig any trash out of the main line that happens to fall down in there before you ever make your fit up. Then you'll make your fit, and in this case, since I don't have a T, which is the way it really ought to be fit, and I'm not going to take the time to cut and bevel all that, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to make this, put it on here like this. Well, how do you know that it's level and running the same as this pipe, as our main line? Well, what you can do is rotate this 90 degrees, put 2-hole pins in it here, and rotate it until you're sure. Now, if you don't want to do that, or you can't do that, say this is fixed in place and you can't do that, then the way to check that is to take a level or a straight edge and rely on your eyeballs. And you simply take this and you line it up with a couple of the 2 holes like that. Then you know that the level is running square with the flange. Once you've got it lined up square with the flange, trust your eyes. Look down the edge of the level and align the edge of the level with the side of the pipe. And then you can accurately, and I mean accurately, line it up. Right there. And again, I wish I had a helper. So, let's see if I can do this one-handedly. Let's check that one more time to get it close. Keep it close. Okay. Eyeballs. All right. So, got to check it one more time. Why? Because we're off this way. Now that might throw our alignment this way off. So what we want to do, raise it up with that one tack in it. Now if you can't, one really neat thing to use if they're available and you have time is to use what we call little pipe jacks. And all they are is a piece of pipe with a bolt stuck in the end of it and you can actually tack them here, and then and you just loosen them up until they come up snug here, and then the flange just basically rests on those, and you can make whatever minor adjustments you have to make sure you get it just perfect. Now I happen to be really close here. Okay, we're riding the line there. I don't have room to set this here, and I don't want to go across that joint, so I'll come over here and I'll go underneath, and I'm riding the line there. So I need to go over that way with it a little bit, like so. I want to hold it over there, so I'm going to use my MIG pliers as a little level, or as a little wedge right there. Okay. Then check this again. See how accurate you are. Okay, it moved a little bit, and I rather suspected that it would. So we can twist it some without breaking our tack. Check it again. And that's close enough. We're within our tolerance. So now we're going to reach over here, make a tack. Eyes. Okay. Remove my little clamp and tack it some more. Now, the final check on this thing, to make sure we're running square with the pipe. Go back to your tape measure. Why? Because now you can get way out here on the end with it. 14 3/8. 14 7/16. So we're 1/16 of an inch off, which means we'd have to tap it back over that way a little bit. But 1/16 of an inch is enough to mess with, so I'm not going to worry about it. One more dimension to check, this way. Remember, it's got to be square with our 2-hole, so we've got to come over this way with it quite a bit. Quite a bit. So we're going to take and just pull on it gently and smack it with your hammer. Still need to come over a little bit more. I'm afraid to hit it too hard. Okay, still level there. Okay, it's close enough that I believe I can weld this side and draw it back in. So I'm going to make a tack here. Just like that. Close enough. Then that, ladies and gentlemen, is our completed pipe assembly. Now remember, typically you would have a T in here, or this would be nestled and blend in just right with it. Since I didn't have one, I just went ahead and set that on there like that. So those are the basic techniques for putting this pipe run together, and these are also the basic techniques as described in your Chapter 14 out of Pipe Welding Procedures. So I hope that answered a lot of questions and cleared up a lot of things. If you have any questions, just get with me and we'll discuss them. Before I let you go, though, I want to real quickly take a look at your Chapter 14 text. And let's see, if there's any high points I need to hit for you here. I'm going to give you some heads up so you'll know where the questions are coming from. Highlight on page 222, highlight all of those numbered items, and then highlight the first paragraph beneath it. That begins, usually all or a number of joints are fitted up as described above. Then highlight the last paragraph on page 222. And then on page 224 where it says pipe to pipe fit up, highlight the paragraph that begins when there are 2 lengths of pipe that must be fitted up. Highlight that. study figure 14.3. These are different types of pipe fittings. This is a reducing long radius elbow, for example. This is a long radius 180-degree return. Here's a T-joint. Here's a cap. Various flanges. Study this. I believe there are a number of questions on your test dealing with this figure right here. Let's see. Turning the page. Welding pipe parts to pipes. Flanges. Highlight that. Highlight the next paragraph on page 227. Pay attention to the method that the gentleman used here to align pipe. He used straight edges to align pipe, which is another way of doing it. Instead of using straight edges, I demonstrated to you how to use the string. Essentially the same thing. On page 228, study those figures, figure 14.6 and 14.7, 14.8. He's got a good thing here, and this is really something I forgot to mention to you. He's laid a framing square over the end of the flange, and then he's measuring down to check the distance between the pipe and the framing square. That's a very good way of checking to make sure that your flange is aligned with your pipe. It is more accurate than using a level. So understand that. Pay attention to that, because I believe you'll have a question on your test concerning that. On page 231, read on how to align elbows, 90-degree elbows. I didn't have an elbow, or I would have fit one up for you and talked to you about it. Read on how to align 45-degree elbows. Oh, one piece of equipment I do want to talk to you about, and this is mentioned on page 232, and he's using a protractor. This is a protractor. Like your center head, it has a little level in it, right here. And like your center head, it has degrees, only it has 360 degrees. So you can go all the way, well, pardon me, it has 180 degrees, but you can find any angle you want to. And if you look at the picture that he's showing on figure 14.3, he's using this to find a strange angle on a piece of pipe. You got a piece of pipe running down like this. By using the protractor, you can find exactly what degree that piece of pipe is at, lock it in, and now you know what the face of the elbow coming off of that piece of pipe is going to have to be cut at, so that the subsequent run leading off is going to be level. So that's what a protractor is. If you'd like to see it, just ask me or Mary or Jeff Brager, and we'll get it for you, and you can look at it. There's probably going to be a question on your test concerning protractors. Let's see. Then on page 233, study how he's using a level and a square to align a T. I didn't have a T, or else I would have shown you that. And then vertical alignment. Read about vertical alignment, and then a plumb bob. Very handy instrument for aligning pipe. So read the section on a plumb bob. And I think that's going to be just about it. The test consists of 15 to 20 questions. I don't remember exactly which, but I think it's 20 questions. And if there's anything in that section, chapter 14, that you don't understand, you're not clear on, get with me and I'll be happy to talk to you about it. Thanks for your attention.